there would be one of the, if not the last scene that we shot for the season. So that day I would always be on set, and I am a crier. I cry in music sessions. I cry, and people look over at me in music sessions, and if it's a sad melody and I'm not crying, they just say, "No, say no more. We'll rewrite." So there's no question I get in tears, not with a specific actor or actress, but when they're leaving, I'm sort of there, and then one of them will start crying, I'll start crying, and then everybody's crying, and and then they go off because you realize in Degrassi itself they're graduating. They may not see each other in real life. They're graduating and they're heading off into different a different sphere of their lives. And yes, it's great when they come back and maybe you can work with them again, or you see them in a party or something like that. I'd like to do more get-togethers to have more of the cast, just sit down and have a few laughs about the old days. So I'm not going to pick out one in particular. It's very emotional. Those right. Scenes when the cast
like
deep
inside. We're so sad to see our friends leave.
We used to give character eulogies as people would leave the show from when at the point that we were watching it, so we could kind of have a thank you for everything that you brought to this character and to the show, and we're sad to see you leave.
Goodbye, Nina Dobrev, basically.
Good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it would have been great to have Nina on the show for a little bit longer. My one regret for not having a character on the show for a little bit longer was Aubrey, and not because he was becoming famous and he is who he is now. And I forget whether I mentioned this in the book, but I was a real supporter. I said that I don't really get involved with stories, but there was one story that I really was hoping would happen. And I was really pushing for it, and it didn't happen in the end. But it was the story of Jimmy going off with
Trina.
Remember,
Trina?
I forget her name. A girl, Trina. Yeah, yes. And so she was going off to have stem cell surgery in Germany because at the time, and I think this was the George Bush era, stem cells were kind of it was new, and well, yeah, it was controversial, and there was a lot of thought that you shouldn't be doing it. Of course, now they're much more accepted, but we wanted to do that storyline. And I actually talked with somebody in the Degrassi cafeteria. He was playing an extra on the show. He had stem cell surgery. He was unable to walk, and he was walking, and he had stem cell surgery. And when I sat down to say hello to him, because I hadn't recognized him, so I thought, I'll sit down and find out who this is. The story really, really moved me. So I really wanted that, I guess it would have been season 8, to end with Jimmy going up on stage in his wheelchair and then getting up and walking across the stage to get his diploma. And, my eyes get moist just thinking about it.
So I'm sure I would have cried the whole time.
Yeah, and I believe you do talk about that in the book. Yeah, that would have been amazing.
Okay.
It seemed like it was hinting at that being a possibility.
They did talk about it. He was saving up, or he wanted to use some of his college fund. It was a little while ago for us.
Right.
I'm honestly really proud of myself that I remembered who Trina's name was. So.
I'm impressed with that as well.
Yes, good. And I think I've been very good in this conversation, but I'm really random. Sometimes I remember the character name and sometimes the actor name, and even when I'm talking with them, and they just roll with it, and understand that,
I mean, there are so many
that's their
names
name
to
for the
remember.
day.
And I think I just had a couple other questions specifically about the book to kind of wrap things up. Recently, I read in an article that CBC Radio called you the Forrest Gump of Canadian pop culture. And in the book, you actually talk about how your editor told you that nobody would believe like half the stories that you ended up actually putting in the book because they were so unbelievable. But I was wondering if there were some stories that ended up not making the cut that you now wish had been included in the book.
There are. I think the answer to that is no. I don't regret having left some stories out because I've tried to select the stories to have a kind of a theme, and you'll have, having read the book, you'll know what the themes are. Setting goals and things like that. But for every story that's in the book, there's easily a dozen other stories that are out there. But some of them, they're interesting but not interesting. I mean, they may show me in a good light, I helped do this and help that person. But they wouldn't have really advanced some of the themes in the book. So I've been really blessed to have a whole series of really, really fun encounters with a lot of amazing people. I don't regret. The only thing that I regret about not telling some of the stories is, because some of these people are so amazing. And one of the entire areas that is not in the book really is things like, marrying Linda. I mean, we had a fantastic wedding that I could describe. It was a circus themed wedding. It was amazing. We had, mini putt golf on the beach because our home is on the beach, and with the 4 stories of balloons rising out of the water, and we had those kind of carny wagons where you come up and kids shoot water pistols, and if you knock something down, you win a plush toy. Well, we had all. It was set for free, and a whole mess of things like that. It was a fantastic wedding. Well, it's fun to talk about. But, and something like I could have been in the book, but I wasn't really making the book about a lot of the personal side of my life, which I could do. I mean, maybe there's another book in it for that. So my only, I don't have any regrets, but I do know that there's so many stories that could have been told. And it's not that they weren't told because I can't mention names or somebody looks bad. I mean, there's a way to tell stories, even if, without making people look bad. I'm not into the sensationalism side. It's just that, they're there, and I've led a blessed life to have so many.
Speaking of the themes of the book, you do talk about a lot of kind of your approach to success and how important failure is in kind of the road to achieving your dreams and achieving your goals and knowing what your goals should be. Could you have an example of one time where you had a great failure while working on Degrassi that ended up turning into a great success story?
Well, I mean, I did talk about one of them in the book where in season 10, Degrassi was canceled and nobody knew. There's nothing like, the adrenaline pumping through your veins to get things moving along. The reason that sort of failure is important is, and I may or may not have sort of made this point really in the book, is if you're not failing, you're not pushing yourself outside of a comfort zone. I mean, there were lots of times, we tried different things. In the early days, we tried an interactive version of Degrassi that was a colossal failure, where people could select A, B, and C on their remotes, and, different things would pop up. And we realized, oh no, that just takes away from the drama. It pulls people out of the story. So we learned from it and moved on. But one of the nice things about failing, particularly in the entertainment world, is nobody knows. When you fail at something like that, failing means that not too many people watched it. So you just move on. The LA Complex story in the book, where, we debuted to the lowest rated numbers in the history of U.S. primetime television. and still managed to get ordered for 2 more seasons. Is even though we weren't able to produce the third season, to me it's just amazing. It was just Martin Garrow, who I was working with, and who, by the way, I don't know if you watch Blind Spot or the ABC series Deception. He does both those series. He's the showrunner in both those series. He's really brilliant. Of course, he wrote the foreword to the book. It was fantastic working with him, and you asked a question about an example in Degrassi. In a sense, they're sort of all the way through that sometimes. Oh, actually, here's a good one. In seasons after season 5, I may get my seasons a little bit wrong. We have our really well-loved characters, and they're going to graduate. So what do? We don't want to lose the characters, so we follow them into university. So for 2 seasons, we follow Emma, and we follow Marco, we follow Lauren,
right.
and Paige, and we follow them into their university life or their post-high school life, whatever that is. And the ratings just started to come down, and Teen Nick, who I think was still called the N at the time, or maybe they were called Teen Nick by then, came to us and said, you know what, Degrassi's probably had its day. 7 years will be a long run. We can sort of wind it down and let's start developing some new series. And we did, and that's when Instant Star came out. But we looked at that and thought, things are not going well. We're maybe failing is a bad word, because the ratings were still solid and we were producing a good show, but it really looked like it was the end. And so Linda and I just went to the writers and we said, you've been talking for a while about building up new, younger characters coming in, but you never have. You keep falling back on telling stories about, understandably, these people that we know and we love. It has to end. If we're going to go out, let's go out in style. You've got to bring in a whole swath of new characters, and we've got to start seeing if we can get the audience invested in them. And that was sort of the start of the Eli Claire era. And we decided, high school is what we're about. It's different when you're in university. In high school, if you miss a class, that's a big deal. Your parents know about it. There's consequences. In university, you miss a class, who cares? So it's a different view of life, and we've got to get back into just the high school thing. So we said goodbye to our beloved characters from the early days of the Next Generation, and went on to new ones. And the audience reaction was, this is horrible. We can't stand it. Where are these other characters? And by week 4, they'd fallen in love with the new characters,
honestly,
and the ratings started skyrocketing.
You guys do such a good job of that, because, we grew up with the original of the Next Generation, so they're so beloved to us, and these are our friends that we've known since we were 11. But we every single time, at first, we start off 2 episodes where we're a little hesitant about these new guys, but then, season 12, we're already on board for Tori and Tristan and Maya. We're here for it.
And we've become hardcore Eclair shippers.
No, that's great.
The process.
Yes. Well, you and me
write
too.
the drama
As
so
well.
They're so dramatic. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have for you. Thank you so much for coming on the show to talk with us. It was such a great time.
I'm still so excited that we got to do this with you. This is really great.
Oh, no, it's fantastic. And I really enjoy these conversations, particularly since undoubtedly you remember more about the show than I do. It's amazing to me, because we'll sometimes do tours of super fans, and they'll walk around. They'll say, "Oh, this is where that happened, and this is where that happened." They'll go, "Oh,
right."
Yeah,
You
that's
talked about
right,
how in the book where you had been misidentifying the hallway spot where Jimmy had gotten shot for years or something.
Oh, I was absolutely convinced that I had the right. And Stephanie Cohen just said to me, "No, no, no, it was over here." And when I was doing